Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about the book Atomic Habits and how we can apply that to weight loss. I'll talk briefly about the 4 laws of habit change, which is really the meat of the book as far as strategies and examples go. But what I really want to focus on this time is the 3 concepts that are early in the book that I think are really important when it comes to weight loss. The subtitle of this book is An Easy and Proven Way to Build Good Habits and Break Bad Ones. So that's a good overview of what you're going to learn in this book. And there are 4 laws of habit change that James Clear talks about in this book. So I'm just going to highlight those briefly here, but you really should go in to read the book and understand that fully, or if you want just a little bit of more of a deeper dive before you commit to reading the book, check out Allie's video for a little bit more fleshed out description of these 4 laws. But the 4 are to create a good habit. He says that you need to make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. And then conversely, to break a bad habit, you want to make that habit invisible, unattractive, difficult, or unsatisfying. So I really appreciate his clean and simple way of talking about creating new habits, and I've gained some new perspectives from reading the book, so I encourage you to check it out. It's definitely worth the read. But what I want to talk about today is some of the concepts he talks about in the early part of the book, and I think they're really useful in the context of weight loss. So let's get to it. The first concept is what he calls the Plateau of latent potential, and I'm going to read you a quote from his book. If you find yourself struggling to build a good habit or break a bad one, it is not because you have lost your ability to improve. It is often because you have not yet crossed the plateau of latent potential. Complaining about not achieving success despite working hard is like complaining about an ice cube not melting when you heated it from 25 to 31 degrees. Your work was not wasted, it's just being stored. All the action happens at 32 degrees. So I really appreciate this analogy. It's the idea of that there's sort of a curve that goes up like this, and that your work builds upon itself, and the more that you do it. It's like planting a seed. You can't expect it to grow all at once, but you have to keep nurturing it. And I think a good example when it comes to weight loss about this is thinking about affirmations or creating new thoughts for ourselves that we feel like we can practice these things and they're not really taking hold. We're still having those old thoughts coming in and we're not seeing the improvement. But over time, we slowly start to incorporate those thoughts. They become part of our normal thinking. We don't have to try so hard at it. So, I think this is just a really useful concept to think about when we get in those points where we feel like we're doing all the things, but we're not seeing the results. It really could be this concept of latent potential. The second concept that I think is really useful is the idea of focusing on systems instead of goals. Goals are about the results that we want, and they're important for setting our direction, but he says that systems are about the process that gets us to the result that we want. And so here's another quote. The goal in any sport is to finish with the best score, but it would be ridiculous to spend the whole game staring at the scoreboard. The only way to actually win is to get better each day. In the words of 3-time Super Bowl winner Bill Walsh, the score takes care of itself. The same is true for other areas of life. If you want better results, then forget about setting goals. Focus on your system instead. So I think this is really huge when it comes to weight wellness and weight loss. We can get so hung up on this goal weight and the idea of the number, and we keep looking at the scale, just like in his analogy, we keep looking at that scoreboard, and we forget about just focusing on playing the game to the best of our ability. And so if we can focus on creating that healthier life, the weight takes care of itself, just like the score takes care of itself. Okay, so for the third concept, last but certainly not least, and in fact my favorite concept in the book, one that I think is super useful and important, James talks about this idea of this model of a target. If you think of the outer ring being outcomes and the second one being processes, and the middle of that target being an identity. And he says that we really need to think about how our habits shape our identity and vice versa. And that when we move from the outer ring, from outcomes to process, then to identity, that this is outcomes-based habits. And when we move from identity to process to outcomes, this is identity-based habits. So I'm going to read you one more quote, and it says, "Many people begin the process of changing their habits by focusing on what they want to achieve. This leads us to outcome-based habits. The alternative is to build identity-based habits. With this approach, we start by focusing on who we wish to become." So when I read this, I just had a resounding yes. Totally, because he says that true behavior change is identity change, and we may start a habit because of being motivated, and the only reason we stick with it is if it becomes a part of our identity. So, our habits will be more effective when we think about who we want to be, not what we want to achieve. And I think when it comes to weight, a good example of this is if we say, I want to lose 50 pounds, it might be better to say, I'm the kind of person who takes care of my mind and body and wants to feel the best I can each day. With this sentence, it's so much clearer to see the habits that will support our identity beliefs. And doesn't it just feel so much better and more energizing to think from this perspective? So if you find yourself doing all the things, putting in the effort, and not quite seeing the results that you want just yet, remember the idea of latent potential. Keep doing the work and it will come to fruition. Also, remember to focus on your systems, not just the goals. You don't want to spend your whole game looking at the scoreboard. If you focus on the healthy habits, the weight will take care of itself, just like the score will take care of itself. And then finally, focus on who you want to become, not what it is that you want to do, not the checklist, but creating the new identity for yourself. Well, I hope you found this interesting or helpful, and I'd love to know down in the comments your thoughts. Have you read Atomic Habits? What did you find most interesting? Or did any of these concepts resonate with you? Tell me all the things down below. And also, if you haven't yet, please subscribe, ding the bell so you get notifications when I post a new video. Connect with me on Instagram, sign up for the email newsletter. Let's connect. I'd love to hear from you. Let's share our wisdom and let's do this together. See you real soon.